Dover Beach by Matthew Arnold. This is a dramatic monologue and was inspired by Arnold's visit to the south coast of England, where the white cliffs of Dover stand. Just 22 miles across the English Channel is the French coast. Stanza 1. The speaker looks out upon a calm sea and observes the fullness of the tide and the moon reflected on the water of the Straits of Dover. Looking across the English Channel at the French coast, the speaker sees the lights flicker and fade away. He then turns his gaze to the cliffs of England that stand glimmering and vast out in the tranquil bay. This is a reference to the imposing and spectacular coastline of the white cliffs of Dover. The speaker then addresses his lady companion and invites her to come to the window and experience the pleasant night air. He describes the long line of spray or foam where the waves of the sea strike against the shore. The moon-blanched land is a reference to the shore, which is bathed in the silvery white moonlight. He draws the attention of his companion to the grating sound or the low rumbling sound of the pebbles as they roll under the tide. These pebbles are carried back by the waves and then tossed back on the shore when they return. This sound of the ebb and flow of the tide begins and ceases and then again begins with a tremulous cadence. In other words, it sets up a trembling, quivering rhythm. And this rhythm, this tremulous cadence of the water receding and coming back to the shore, strikes the eternal note of sadness. This sudden intrusion of sadness hints at the speaker's sense of loss, which finds fuller expression later in the poem. This stanza, which began with a beautiful description of the sea, strangely ends on a note of sadness. Through the symbol of the sea, the poem suggests two key ideas. Firstly, that major shifts in the fabric of society occur subtly. The beach's slow, repetitive movements symbolize the gradual but inevitable loss of faith that the speaker senses in this historical moment. The retreating waves of the sea are an apt metaphor for the decline of religious faith, which has already been described in part 1. Stanza 2. The poet now refers to Sophocles, who was one of the most famous writers of tragic plays in ancient Greece in the 5th century BC. He believes that long ago Sophocles too had heard the mournful sound of the waves as he sat by the Aegean Sea, and he too had detected a note of sadness in that sound. The poet imagines that the mournful sound of the waves reminded Sophocles of the misery of the human condition, which later found expression in his tragic plays. The turbid ebb and flow of human misery is a reference to a state of confusion and uncertainty. In the concluding line of the stanza, the poet comes back to the present. The speaker, like Sophocles, observes the sea and finds a similar idea and larger message in its motion. To be continued in part 3. Thank you.